Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh and it's time for an Overwatch lore tour. In this video I'm taking you on a journey through the lore Easter eggs and a little speculation around Overwatch's new escort map, Junkertown. I'll be going through the map piece by piece to show it all off, along with references others may well have missed. We get a lot of details about Junkrat and Roadhog's potential life before they got exiled from Junkertown, life in the chaotic Junker society, the Junkertown Queen, mech battles and a whole lot more. Firstly, we'll have a look at the map bio and what we potentially learn from that. Junkertown is located in the harsh and unforgiving Australian outback. Constructed from the remains of a destroyed Omnium, it's now the home to a band of lawless scavengers known as the Junkers, led by their cutthroat queen. When they aren't pillaging the Omnium skeleton for anything of value, the Junkers blow off steam in the Scrapyard, a massive gladiatorial arena whose combatants fight for glory, riches, and to survive. First, a couple of interesting facts from that. We do actually learn that Junkertown is constructed from the remains of a destroyed Omnium and must be pretty close to it. As a very quick recap of Junkers lore, after the first Omnic crisis, which was 26 plus years ago in the Overwatch timeline, the Australian government gifted the Australian Omnium and the surrounding area to the Omnics that had nearly destroyed Australia, trying to make a peace accord. Now, Omniums were automated with artificial intelligence production facilities for Omnics or robots, who were set to revolutionise world manufacturing until it was found out that their Omniums were not meeting the production quotas that they'd specified, and the company was actually shut down when mass fraud was uncovered within the company, before all of the Omniums miraculously came to life and started churning out battle robots or battle Omnics, which caused the first Omnic crisis. The Australian government's arrangement displaced Roadhog, or Mako Rutledge as he was at the time, and a bunch of outback residents who apparently just wanted to be left alone. They formed a violent rebellion in the Australian Liberation Front movement, they struck against the Omnium, and the rebels actually sabotaged the Omnium's fusion core. This created an explosion, destroying the facility, irradiating the region with radiation, and littered the outback with lots of twisted metal and scrap. From this wasteland, a bunch of people came together and Junkertown, a rather lawless society, was formed. Now, from the map bio, we've learnt that it was actually made from the remains of a destroyed Omnium. We can actually see signs of this in other Overwatch materials that have been released previously. In the cancelled Overwatch graphic novel First Strike, there are several panels that show this dome kind of spherical shape as being part of an Omnium. This panel where we see this mysterious man as well as a news reporter, and these panels where we see Overwatch or the First Strike team potentially going into action in a snowy area. If we look in the middle of Junkertown above the Scrapyard, it almost seems as if the Scrapyard is built within this actual spherical structure. Now, given that First Strike has not been released and cancelled, we don't know whether it will ever be canon that this is what an Omnium actually looks like. But if it was, then Junkertown is actually built pretty much directly on top of the Omnium. I don't know how the Junkers would be able to move this huge spherical dome kind of shape. And if you have a look straight through the top of the Scrapyard, you can see a hole in the ceiling of the kind of sphere that would perhaps correspond to something blowing up inside it. Who knows? The second topic of interest from that is of course on everyone's lips in terms of speculation, is the Junkertown Queen. Now, there are posters now, since the latest build of this on the PTR, that we can see of the Queen on the walls, so we now know what she looks like. In a Gamescom stream, she was described by devs as a charismatic former mech champion who rose to power as a result of her prowess as a mech combatant in the Scrapyard. We know that the Queen certainly got a personal beef with Junkrat and Roadhog. Whatever it was that got the two exiled, Junkrat suggests in the plan, stealing the Queen's cash, blowing up her summer shack, a beatdown at the bar. They're not welcome back. There are wanted posters for them all over the Junkertown level. We get an idea of the Queen's personality from the Queen's decree just as you go through the front gates of Junkertown. No Omnics, well that makes sense with whole Junker society probably being pretty anti-Omnic. Pay your share, that might be why the Queen has such a hoard of money at the end of the level that we can see. Finders keepers, settle your own scores, and troublemakers will be exiled at number 5. Giving an idea of the kind of chaotic society and how life must be like living in Junkertown. But the Queen note has put some order into play here. Even if it's only 5 pretty broad, pretty chaotic rules, there's still some kind of rules to live by. As for her likelihood of being a new hero, I'll discuss that in the speculation section at the end of this video. Okay, time for a tour of Junkertown where we'll go through every single little detail of the map. Starting in the attacking area and the attacking spawn, in the first section where you move the payload up to the gate, we get a little idea of Junkrat and Roadhog's life in and around Junkertown. In Roadhog's house, which is the attacking spawn and quite a big piece of real estate, a barn or similar, there's a really cool Easter egg straight off the bat. If you stand on these two pressure plates inside the spawn, it opens this gate, and inside there's a little hideaway with a secret couple of safes, gold, pachymari and more. Now remember of course that Junkrat came to notoriety when he discovered something extremely valuable in the bones of the Omnium, and he's been chased by a lot of people for it until he hired Roadhog as his bodyguard. Now could this be the hiding place perhaps of Junkrat's treasure? It's only accessible by the two of them or two people. Admittedly, with this security arrangement, any two people could step on the plates, but worth thinking about. We get to see Roadhog's bed as well. Clearly he eats in bed, with a few Chinese steaming dishes being there for the dumplings and buns of which he's obviously so fond, as we see in his Lunar New Year's highlight intro. As we'll see from the Junkertown takeaway very soon, these are clearly something that are available. If you look by Roadhog's bed, he's clearly got some kind of inhaler or gas cylinder. Now Roadhog having to breathe something while he sleeps, sleep apnea or something, could be quite possible. Given that everyone in Junkertown probably has some level of radiation exposure, could our Hog's problem be a little bit worse than others? Well, straight next to his bed we can see how he makes his Hogdrogen, I believe it's called. You can see this machine that if you shoot gives out little puffs of gas, and it fills up Roadhog's canisters that he uses in Take a Breather, his healing ability. That little bit of speculation on Roadhog's health, well, in the concept art book that you get with the collector's edition of Overwatch, it actually describes Roadhog's little canisters as a pressurized chemical mixture that helps to counteract the effects of radiation exposure. So if Roadhog has to breathe that overnight, then maybe he's got a bit of a dependency on it or something. As well as a few home comforts, including a TV and a little bit of a cooking setup, we also see in pride of place in the middle of the barn type room, Roadhog's chopper. We've seen this already in A Moment in Crime, the little Junkrat and Roadhog animation that came out before their announcement as heroes, when in one scene they're running through London, having just made off with the crown jewels. Now how they got the bike back to Junkertown is an interesting one. Probably like how Soldier 76 travels around the world without getting arrested. They probably don't use commercial flights, but if you need to have a reason or some logic behind everything in a story, it can somewhat hinder telling stories, so we'll have to give that one a bit of a pass, I think. Finally, before you head out of Roadhog's accommodation, you see a blackboard which has the plan on, which is obviously the plan from the Junkrat and Roadhog, the plan short that we saw at Gamescom. Get back into Junkertown, blow up the Queen, take the gold and run away seems to be the extent of it. No plans to rule or take over Junkertown, just to get revenge? It failed at the disguising point that's asterisked, as we know. Junkrat announcing himself at the front of the gates somewhat undid the disguises that the guys put on. Okay, heading on over to Junkrat's house, we see something a lot more simple. Now, I love the door with a no trespassing sign above it, next to a completely open hole into his house. If you look on the other side of the door, it's actually all boarded up. Seems very Junkrat, that kind of thinking. We see tyres and the kind of bomb-type objects that Junkrat's clearly making, as well as his workbench with his trap next to it, and a safe with very appropriate "stay away from my stuff" signage. Over on the sofa that Junkrat probably sleeps on, we can also see a cricket bat and a rugby ball. Meteor is the same brand as on Junkrat's Cricket Summer Games skin, so that's probably a joke judging by the logo next to it on Doomfist's Meteor Strike. But Junkrat, bit of a sports fan there. As for the payload, well, we've seen this in the plan short already. It has gold, the king or queen of Pachymari of course, Junkrat's smiley face typical branding, and a whole heap of explosives rigged underneath if you look underneath the skirts in quite a subtle manner, or as subtle as Junkrat is capable of. In another one of the front buildings you can see the large air blower, old style supercharger, Fast and Furious type cars that kind of remind me of perhaps Fast and Furious, but really it's the Mad Max style engine protrusion vibe. Okay, coming up to the Junkertown gate, something new here. There's actually new voice work for the Queen in Junkertown. She says things as you go through the level. Here's a preview of one bit I managed to catch.
You're either braver or dumber than you look to come back here, Junkrat.
I have heard a couple others. I'll try and come back and get them as clean files if they are ever available from data exploring tools. The Queen also says a new challenger approaches or similar as you get close to the scrapyard. I do like the little "watch your step" that's visible in a few different places. It's a very Junkrat phrase, one of his voice lines, and also ironic given that it's next to things as innocuous as a flight of stairs, but also the big drops straight off the edge of Junkertown. As we wind through the streets of Junkertown in the middle area of the map going towards the scrapyard, we first see the takeaway with beloved buns and other food. This was renamed from Takeout by Blizzard after Australians on Reddit and other places informed them that takeout was more of an Americanism than takeaway. Gotta love Blizzard attention to detail with those small changes. Now around here we see posters of various scrapyard contestants and mech battlers. I'll discuss those in the scrapyard section. On the right we have Bruce's Rec Yard, a salvage shop that seems to sell everything from bar taps to serve beer to batteries and toilets. Swagman's needlepoint as well is over on the left hand side as you wind around the streets. A swagman was a travelling Australian worker, or slang for one, who'd go from farm to farm carrying the world in his bedroll, or swag. The swaggy was a thing that came up as a term in the late 1800s apparently, and is of course mentioned in the song Waltzing Matilda, with a bit of an anti-authoritarian vibe that kind of suits pretty well with Junkertown's atmosphere. Now, Swagman's needlepoint is a tattoo shop, we can see from the inks and the designs around the walls. Some have compared it to Sombra's origin trailer, primarily due to the colour of lighting in the chairs, but I think this is a tattoo shop and probably nothing to do with that. Sombra's tech in her origin trailer looks to be a bit more sophisticated, perhaps integrated into her body. I'd bet a Junkertown tattoo shop might not be able to install this, but who knows. There is a nice touch on the wall of Swagman's if you have a look at this sold tattoo design, which is of course Roadhog's belly tattoo, presumably done before he was exiled with Junkrat. Over on the right as another defensive spawn is the Wolf Woods Bar. Open mic night in Junkertown on this stage I think could be quite a tough crowd or a raucous affair, probably as you can see by the damage around here. As we finally go into the scrapyard, the massive gladiatorial arena, we can clearly see that standing in the arena or fighting in the arena can help you in Junker society. Look at the Queen, she fought her way up through the scrapyard and is now the boss, although that does beg the question of what happened to any previous boss of Junkertown. The flag on the front is an interesting one. Is it a Junkers flag? Is it maybe an Australian Liberation Front emblem? Or just a banner for the scrapyard? It almost looks like an omnic of some kind with two weapons underneath it. I guess the only reason it would be an omnic on the flag or banner is if it was showing the Junkers' disdain or hatred of omnics. If you go through the left side of the entrance to the scrapyard, you can see a betting and gambling office with some pretty cool posters. Maybe it's where the Queen makes a bit of her fortune that we see at the end of the level. In the arena and town, as well as in the gambling section, we learn a little bit more about three of the combatants in favour right now. There are loads of posters. One of them is Wrecking Ball. Now, there is a mech with a Wrecking Ball on the scrapyard floor. It does look a bit bust though, if they're the actual champion, as this poster proclaims. The next is Kelvin 506. Now this is a little reference in itself. It appears to have some kind of flamethrower, and Kelvin 506 is 451 Fahrenheit. Now that must be a reference to Fahrenheit 451. As a quick explanation, Kelvin is a measurement of temperature. Kelvin 506 or 506 Kelvin is 451 Fahrenheit, and Fahrenheit 451 is a dystopian novel by an American writer called Ray Bradbury. It's about a future American society where books are outlawed and firemen burn any that are found. The tagline of the book explains it as the temperature at which book paper catches fire and burns. Now in that book there are several comments on what is effectively quite a hedonistic, pleasure-seeking, illiterate society, which again might draw some comparisons to Junkertown. The third poster is Bludger. Now he has two different posters. On one, on the Versus poster, we see that he has a claw, the other he has kind of a buzzsaw. So maybe the mechs are detachable or have modules, which makes perfect sense. In the gambling bookmakers section, we can see that the next battle is clearly Kelvin 506 versus Bludger, and if we have a look at one of the defensive spawns, we can actually see these two mechs. Bludger's with the saw blade fitted, the one that kind of looks a bit like a goblin shredder to me from World of Warcraft, and the other being Kelvin 506 with flamer on it. Now interestingly, he has a plaque that says King on it. Was Kelvin 506 perhaps the king or some kind of significant figure in Junkertown? Was he displaced by the current Queen? Who knows? Total speculation. As we go through the scrapyard and the revolving section of it, in a pit underneath we can see Omnic parts and remains. Now we don't know whether these are from the old Omnium or perhaps maybe a bit more recently, as one of the arms is actually still twitching down there. Now I found it ironic that you can spot a poster or paper underneath the mess with hope on it. I don't know whether it's meant to be echoing this poster or not, but there's not much hope for Omnics here in Junkertown. Finally, moving on to the Queen's throne, where we see her weapons, a spear type weapon, of which there are several actually around Junkertown lying on different points of the map, particularly in the scrapyard, and what I'm going to describe as a vibroblade. It's got a serrated edge there and it's got some kind of power attached to it. An Omnic headpiece on the other side of her throne, much like the one of Zenyatta's model, shows that there's clearly no love for Omnics here. But remember, of course, that's pretty much what this society is built around. Finally, we have the Queen's vault. Now, there's a lot of gold or money here. We don't know where it's been amassed from. Maybe gambling, maybe paying your share as one of the Queen's tenants. Perhaps people have to pay some kind of money to live in Junkertown or a share of anything they find. Mech battle winnings. I'm sure she's got enough money here that people would want to challenge her for it. Okay, that's the tour done. Now time for a little bit of speculation finally. Well, first things first, let's address the Queen. In the Gamescom 27 streams, a lot of streamers such as Valkyr, Queenie and Stylosa managed to have a chat with some of the devs. Now, she was described as a charismatic former mech champion, this Queen. She was also described by one dev, I think on Queenie's stream, as just a voice at this point. So she was just a voice in the short The Plan. Now we have some what is pretty cool looking quality concept art, but of course there is a lot of that in Overwatch's history, much of which has never turned into heroes at this point in time. The Queen does of course have a voice actor, as we've heard in the plan, and we've also now heard in the level audio work. So could she become a hero? Well, I'm not going to take a separate video to go over that just yet. I don't think there's quite enough to go on, but she is certainly popular. Everyone is loving the art and the idea of the Queen by the looks of things, and Doomfist, after all, let's not forget, started as just a gauntlet in terms of a plot mechanic for driving Overwatch's original animated introduction trailer. So I'd love to see her personally in future. Remember of course that if she is going to be a hero, then it could be quite a long time before we see her, given that if Doomfist wasn't on a planned hero roadmap, and we take the Overwatch team of course at face value as of the launch of Overwatch or the announcement of Overwatch perhaps, then it took quite a long time for him to come to the game. Overwatch is kind of crying out for supports and maybe another tank at this point in time, rather than any other offensive or defensive heroes, so the Queen kind of looks attacky, offensive-y maybe in terms of her build. I don't know how you'd build her in terms of making her a hero that fits into maybe a support category, so there's another reason why she might not be anytime soon, but I'd love to see her. What do you think? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Finally, a few thoughts on the Omnium and the Junkers. Why has the Australian government left the Junkers to their own devices for so long? I mean, we know that urban Australia has recovered somewhat. Just look at Sydney in Junkrat and Roadhog's comic, from when it had large Omnics walking around the harbour to the kind of recovered state it is in now. The Australian government clearly weren't able to stop the Australian Liberation Front from fighting the Omnics or prevent the fusion core of the Omnium going up. Do they have some kind of deal with the Junkers? Leaving them alone? Or is it just a case of ignoring a problem that isn't affecting them right now? Are the Junkers their own little lawless society in the middle of the outback that don't really affect wider Australia? Now, a final thought. The Junkers may have a bit more power than we originally may have thought. Given that Omniums around the world were shut down when Omnica Corporation was forcibly dissolved before the Omnic crisis, the Junkertown Omnium might be the only Omnium that secrets or information can be salvaged or obtained from. In which case, Junkrat's secret and anything else the Junkers might find could be really, really valuable. We may never find out what Junkrat possesses. It might be a MacGuffin in terms of driving the plot, but his secret has to be pretty valuable, given that he has bounty hunters, gangs and opportunists hunting him down according to his bio. Any ideas as to what he might have? Do let me know in the comments. Thanks very much for tuning in to this Overwatch lore tour of Junkertown. Do like, subscribe, let me know what you think of the map, the lore and the Easter eggs with a comment in the comments below, and your thoughts on whether the Queen would make a good new hero. If you like Overwatch lore and story, please check out all my explanations, analysis and speculation on heroes, maps, comics, animated shorts and a whole bunch more, as well as their voice lines and interactions, all in these playlists here. A big thanks to my patrons on Patreon. Without them, these longer lore videos would not exist, period. If you'd like to see how you can support the channel from just maybe $1, £1 or less than a cup of coffee or chocolate bar a month, please take a click through the link. There are some cool rewards too. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.